I posted a photo on my WeChat Moments, using the tone of a full-on simp. The caption said, "True love isn't bound by blood ties. At the request of Goddess Sophia. I got sterilized for love." The picture was of a tattoo on my arm. It read, "Sophia's simp." My sister was holding a razor blade to her wrist, just about to kill herself. When she saw the video I posted, her vision went black. She clenched her teeth in fury. With her left hand, she snapped the blade in half. With her right hand, she crushed her phone. Suicide postponed. There's a toxic woman, daring to emotionally manipulate her little brother. She's coming to kill her. Chapter 1. I was a homeless orphan. When I was 6 years old, a group of people abducted me and brought me before a rich young lady named Willow. I heard a conversation between the system and Willow. The system's voice was cold and emotionless. "Willow. He is the future vicious ultimate villain. He will torment the male lead and bully the female lead. So you must kill him now and save the male lead." I froze. I was the vicious ultimate villain. What did that even mean? Was she going to kill me? Willow gave a detached response, turned around in her chair, and casually played with a fruit knife in her hand. Our eyes met. She paused, then laughed in disbelief, pointed at me, and asked the system, "Wait, are you saying this 6-year-old kid is the vicious ultimate villain? How vicious could he possibly be? Spraying the male and female leads with a water gun." The system explained, "He's still young now, but when he grows up, he will obsessively torment both the male and female leads." They talked so much, I was dizzy from hunger and couldn't care about anything else. I grabbed the hem of Willow's dress, looked up at her, and said, "Pretty big sister, I want to eat." The system gasped sharply and said, as expected of the vicious ultimate villain, able to bend and stretch, incredibly manipulative, terrifying. "Willow, cover your ears. Don't be deceived by his sweet talk. Kill him now." Willow paused. She blinked and said, But he called me pretty big sister." The system said solemnly, "Think about the male lead you love. Don't go soft-hearted. Make the decision now." At the mention of the male lead, Willow's expression hardened. She tightened her grip on the knife. The next second, her gaze fell on my thin, fragile arms. She hesitated, then said to the system, "No rush, no rush. Even death row prisoners in ancient times got a last meal. Let him eat first, killing him later won't be too late." After eating, I got a carb crash and said, "Pretty big sister, I want to sleep." The system frowned and said, "Although he is pitiful, skinny, small, and malnourished, but, Willow, we cannot go soft. Even if he calls us pretty big sister, we cannot go soft." Willow completely lost her temper and snapped, "What do you mean us? He only called me pretty big sister. You stupid system, stop trying to include yourself." The system and Willow got into a fierce argument. By the time they finished arguing, I was already curled up on the ground, fast asleep. The system sighed, "Let's get back to business. Hurry up and kill him." Willow lowered her head, looked at me, and said, "No rush. Let him wake up first before killing him. Attacking someone while they're asleep is really bad manners." The system thought for a moment and said, True, if he wakes up, he might even call us pretty big sister again." No, I mean, he'll be easier to kill once he's awake." Chapter 2. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. During those 3 months, Willow and the system planned to make a move every single day, but every time, they ended with, "No rush, no rush." In the end, Willow said they couldn't delay a child's education. The system said that made sense. So, she and the system together, gave me a nice name and found a good school, and sent me to 1st grade of elementary school. From that moment on, Willow stopped revolving around the male lead, because she started revolving around the teachers instead. "Teacher, why are 2 of our George's eyebrows missing today? Who bullied our George, was it? If anything happens to him, I'll make your entire school pay with their lives." "Teacher, in this class photo, why isn't our George standing in the middle? Oh my God, our George is obviously the best and most well-behaved child. Does the tens of millions our Lou family donates to your school every year mean nothing?" Willow Lou's domineering female CEO side was beginning to show, and my little demon child side was also starting to emerge. Soon, the principal began messaging Willow, "Young lady, hello. It's like this. George insisted on playing horseback riding with his female deskmate at school today. Please take a look, this is really inappropriate." A video was attached. In it, all the other boys were carrying the girls, but George was the only one letting his female deskmate be the horse. Willow replied, "So what? Girls are allowed to ride boys, but boys aren't allowed to ride girls. Tell her to crawl faster, she's the slowest one." The principal replied with a string of question marks. Of course, when I caused trouble too many times, Willow would still discipline me. For example, one time, the teacher said to Willow Lou. Ms. Lou. George was lowering his head in class reading an extracurricular book. I thought he was reading an introduction to artificial intelligence, and I even felt the child was ahead of his time. Only later did I realize it was an introduction to artificial idiocy. Willow wanted to punish me, but at that moment, the system couldn't help sighing. You know, he's had no parents since he was little. He's always been by your side. Sigh. Willow, just scold him if you want. He'll just look at you like that. He's not pitiful at all, not sad at all. At that moment, I seized the opportunity. I looked up at Willow, grabbed onto her sleeve cuffs with both hands, and blinked my eyes hard. Willow immediately couldn't bring herself to punish me anymore. The self-reflection essay she originally decided to make me write went from 500 words to 300 words, then to 100 words. In the end, she only made me write a few characters. She thought I would write, "Big sister." I was wrong. But when she opened it, she found, "I love you, big sister." She and the system both sucked in a sharp breath. Tears welled up in their eyes at the same time. And from then on, they couldn't bear to scold me even once more. Heh heh. This vicious villain's childhood form was merely using a tiny bit of strategy. Chapter 3. But I had also seen Willow lose her temper. That day, Willow was on a date with the male lead, Makoto. It should have been a very important date, because, according to the plot, she was supposed to completely fall in love with Makoto because of it. However, the moment she arrived at the restaurant Makoto had reserved, she received a call from the principal. The principal sounded frantic. "Young lady, this is bad, really bad. Today the school held a cooking activity, and George didn't cook the green beans thoroughly. After all 30 students in the class ate them, they were sent straight to the hospital. Your George has turned into Hannibal Lecter." Willow had no choice but to stand Makoto up and rush off to clean up the mess I had caused. I remember it very clearly. That was the first time Willow ever lost her temper in front of me. She was furious and shouted, "This is outrageous." They knew George was going to cook, so why didn't they take antidotes in advance? Did they even think about how much psychological trauma it would leave on our George when they all passed out after eating? What if our George is scared of eating in the future? Our George is already so skinny, and you still had to scare him like that. The principal was so frightened that sweat poured down his head. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Exactly. Kids these days really have no sense at all. How could they not take antidotes beforehand? I'll definitely lecture them later." I hope George wasn't scared. Sigh. "Young lady, look at the trouble this has caused. Please don't be angry." Still, Willow was afraid that the other children would stop playing with me because of the green bean incident. So, she gave every classmate who ended up in the hospital a courtyard mansion in the city center and a luxury car. 30 classmates. Each one woke up to find a property ownership certificate and car keys with a R logo placed in front of them. The classmates were overjoyed. They asked each other if they had already arrived in heaven, and how something this good could possibly be real. In short, not a single classmate hated me because of the incident. On the contrary, many students at school begged me to become the Demon King again and cook green beans for them. Ever since I got a big sister, life had become unbelievably happy as I dodged 3 classmates who were chasing me and begging me to cook green beans again. I thought to myself just that. Chapter 4. Time flowed on like water. That year, I was 16. Willow was 26. That day, I was sitting in class at school. Suddenly, I saw bullet comments floating across the ceiling. "So sad. Is the devoted female supporting character Willow about to be written out?" More bullet comments followed. Yeah, the male lead just proposed to the female lead. He even invited Willow to their wedding. Makoto compared Willow to the poor female lead and said to her, "Willow, she's different from you. She's a blank sheet of paper, a pure white flower that has never been tainted by the secular world. A woman like you, raised by money, no matter how glamorous you dress, can never outshine the purity and clarity in her eyes." Willow was shaking with rage. Another bullet comment replied, "The problem is, this so-called poor female lead's dream is literally to get rich overnight, wear luxury brands, and live in a villa. She'd love nothing more than to marry into money. No idea what she's acting all noble about." Yet another bullet comment said, "Forget all that. In 20 minutes, Willow is going to end her own life. Sigh, she's my favorite son, a rich young lady. Such a pity. After she dies, the Liu family will be eaten alive by their competitors. And her younger brother will go from a rich heir to a penniless nobody. So tragic. My sister was going to kill herself." I jumped to my feet and bolted out of the classroom. I absolutely could not let my sister die. I had to find her, now. But where would she be? I called her phone. No answer. It wasn't turned off. The calls were being hung up. In a flash of inspiration, I thought of a solution. No matter where my sister was right now, I definitely wouldn't make it there in time, so I could only try an unorthodox method. I rushed into a tattoo shop, asked the owner to make a temporary tattoo, then ran straight to the andrology department of the hospital next door. I stuck the tattoo on my left arm. It read, Sophia's simp. I pulled a pink long-sleeve shirt over my right arm. After finding the right angle with my phone, I framed the department sign in the shot, held my left hand with my right, fingers interlocked, and deliberately exposed the tattoo. Then I set the timer. Just like that, I got a photo packed with information. I immediately posted it on WeChat Moments, visible to my sister only. The caption read, True love isn't bound by blood ties. At the request of Goddess Sophia, I got sterilized for love, no regrets. Below that, I attached a screenshot showing the transfer of all my assets. With the note, voluntary gift. In less than half a second, the bullet comments exploded. Why isn't the second female lead dying anymore? No idea. She screamed something like, that toxic woman deserves to die, and ran out. I let out a long, deep breath, and collapsed into a chair. The nerves that had been stretched tight finally loosened, just a little. Chapter 5. But I knew this act couldn't end yet. I immediately deleted the post, pretending I had forgotten to block her. Then skipped my afternoon classes and didn't return to school. That night, I deliberately came home very late. The vast living room was unlit, which was strange. I raised my hand and turned on the light. The next second, I saw Willow sitting on the central sofa, with 2 neat rows of servants standing behind her. She sat in the main seat, her body leaning back against the red velvet chair. Legs crossed, eyes half-lidded, expression blank and cold. All the servants behind her had their heads lowered. I jumped in fright and asked, Sis, why are you back? She didn't answer. Her gaze was icy, locked onto me for a long time. It was already summer. Yet I was wearing a jacket, just enough to cover the tattoo. Willow's tone was calm, without the slightest ripple, as she asked, You didn't go to class this afternoon. Where did you go? I put on a flattering smile and said, Sis, I went out to hang out with some friends. Friends? Willow's voice was cold. She said, You act like a simp for your friends. I lowered my head and didn't speak, trying to hide my guilty expression, like a student who had messed up in front of a teacher. Willow stood up. All the servants immediately understood and turned to leave. In the enormous mansion, only the 2 of us remained. Willow walked toward me step by step, and stopped right in front of me. She was half a head shorter than I was. Yet I felt an overwhelming, chilling pressure. I couldn't help but take a few steps back. The next second, I heard her cold voice, Take off your clothes. I was speechless. This was ridiculous. I clearly hadn't done anything wrong. So why, in front of her, did I still feel this guilty? I forced a pleasing smile and looked at her. No, wait, sis, can I ask, have you been very busy lately? I've really missed you. Sis, are you tired? Did you miss me? She raised her eyes to look at me. Her voice was sharp with frost as she said, Are you taking them off yourself? Or do you want me to help you? All right, there was no way around it. I scratched my head and said, Don't, I'll do it myself. I deliberately slowed my movements as much as possible. But there was nowhere left to stall. The moment I took off my jacket, Willow grabbed my arm and shoved my sleeve up. The next second, her eyes turned red, as if dazed. She clutched my arm tightly. Her fingers trembled, her nails digging deep into the tattoo. Yet she didn't loosen her grip. She looked up at me and asked, word by word, What is this? I didn't say anything. Willow bit down hard on her lower lip. Then she shouted in fury, George, you're only 16. Tell me, how far did you go for that toxic woman? I only felt my face burning hot. I turned my head away and said, It has nothing to do with you. Willow straightened up. Her voice dropped to absolute zero as she asked, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to say it, or not? I stared at her in a daze. From the time I was 6 until I was 16, Willow had always spoken to me gently and softly, no matter how much trouble I caused. She had never been like this. Sigh, if only the system were here. Maybe it could help talk Willow down. Unfortunately, the system had been busy with missions in other worlds lately, and hadn't been around. But I knew one thing very clearly. I had to keep acting. Only when Willow had something she couldn't let go of, would she keep on living. I took a deep breath. The next second, I shook off her hand, looked resolute, and said loudly, There's nothing for me to say to you. What right do you have to interrogate me? You love Makoto, so you're willing to do anything for him. I love my goddess, and I'm willing to do anything for her too. I just love her. What did I do wrong? And don't get it twisted. She didn't force me to get sterilized. It's just that only after I do it, will she even consider being with me. What right do you have to call her a toxic woman? Get out of my way. After that full throttle, thunderous simp declaration, the room fell into dead silence. Willow's expression didn't change much, but her gaze briefly lost focus, as if something in her mind had suddenly clicked into place. The next second, she froze. She stared at me blankly and murmured in disbelief, You learned this from me? Willow barely managed not to faint. She was almost struggling to breathe. A child grows into the image of the one who raised them. Him being this humble, this self-abasing now, it was entirely her doing. She gave everything for Makoto, so he learned to do the same. He, too, gave everything for the person he loved, without counting the cost, without caring about consequences, even to the point of sterilization. Chapter 6. I held my forehead with one hand and let my tears fall, looking utterly devastated. Halfway through my fake crying, I peeked at her through my fingers. She seemed to think of something, and panic instantly washed over her whole body. The resentment in her eyes faded, replaced by an overwhelming surge of guilt and a kind of pain. I didn't know how much time passed. She leaned closer to me and tugged lightly at my sleeve. Her tone was no longer angry when she said, Your sister was wrong. I wasn't a good role model for you. I shouldn't have kept interrogating you like this. You're not a child anymore. You have your own privacy. But you should tell your sister the truth. Just how far have you gone for her? Of course, she knew the hospital would never perform surgery on me. But as for everything else, I couldn't make anything up. What a nightmare of a question. Whenever I run into a question I can't answer, I simply don't speak. Sure enough, Willow grew even more anxious. With a worried look on her face, she said, It's okay. George is just sick. Sister will take you to see a psychologist. All right. This question was still hard to answer. Seeing that I remained silent, she switched tactics and asked another one. Promise sister you'll break up with her. Okay. Now this question was easy to answer. I even had references to back it up. I said, Leave her for you. No way. I want to be in love. The corner of Willow's mouth twitched. She bit her lip and asked, What do you even like about her? This question was easy too, well documented in the literature. I replied, I just like the way she spends my money. You. Willow raised her hand at me, then slowly lowered it again. In the end, she just couldn't bring herself to slap me. She swallowed her anger again and again. Surprisingly, she didn't even curse me. Instead, she shouted, George, go kneel in the study as punishment. Kneel until you're willing to break up. I was going all in on my rebellious demon child persona, pure ungrateful menace. Grinding my teeth, I snapped. Willow, I've had enough of you. Why don't you just go die? If you were dead, I could be with her. Willow froze, then laughed in anger. She glared at me and said, If I die, you think you and that bitch can live happily ever after? Fine. George, don't worry, I'll live to 100. You two can forget about being together. Inside, I was ecstatic. That was exactly what I wanted. But even in my wild joy, I didn't forget my acting. I kicked over a chair and stormed back to my room, slamming the door shut with a bang. I even remembered to play Love Even Unto Death, hitting the play button to sell the melancholy. I acted and acted, completely satisfied with myself. Lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, I let out a long breath. For now, Willow probably wouldn't die. I knew it. Pulling the simp routine was definitely effective on her, because when I was 10 years old, there was a TV drama that became wildly popular. In that drama, the male lead was a rich second-generation heir to take responsibility for a female lead who was pregnant with another man's child. He handed over his entire fortune just to give her a sense of absolute security. Back then, I understood nothing. I lay sprawled on the sofa, blankly watching them fall in love. That day, Willow came home. When she saw me watching that kind of drama, her vision went black. She was scared half to death. The camera happened to cut to the female lead's face. Willow panicked so badly that she delivered a high whip kick and smashed the television to pieces. The very next second, she realized what she'd done and hurriedly said to me, George, it's okay. It's okay. Sister was just practicing a split and lost her balance. She took my hand and led me back to my room. Then she told the butler that this TV drama was to be permanently blacklisted. I was never allowed to see it again. And that night, Willow played a game with me. She made me take out all of my allowance and go all in on an exploding bean challenge. If I picked the wrong bean, all my allowance went straight to her. If I picked the right one, the prize money would keep accumulating. I still remember that day. She successfully wiped out every last cent of my allowance. I completely broke down and burst into loud sobs. I cried with snot and tears all over my face. Willow squatted in front of me and gently wiped away my tears. She said, George, even when you know the odds, you can still lose. People's hearts are impossible to predict. If you gamble your entire fortune on one person's heart, how many chances do you really think you have of winning? From now on, no more going all in. Got it? I nodded, half understanding, half confused. Willow smiled. She reached out and poked my forehead. That year, Willow was 18, and she hadn't yet been physically and emotionally destroyed by the male lead. She was young and radiant, sailing smoothly through life, a rising star in the business world, dazzling and unstoppable. I pulled myself out of the memory and returned to the present, clenching my teeth. From childhood until now, my sister has truly been too good to me. I will never let my sister die. If my sister really died, then whenever I missed her in the future, I'd only be able to talk to a grave. I will never agree to something like that. Chapter 7. After acting non-stop for an entire day, this little demon child, Oscar-worthy actor, finally collapsed into sleep from sheer exhaustion. Half asleep, half awake, I felt the mattress beside me sink slightly. The next second, cold, slender fingers touched my arm. Someone seemed to be applying ointment to the bruised marks. In the pitch-black darkness, a woman's breathing was clearly audible. Then I heard Willow's voice, utterly lonely. The usually aloof and distant Willow now sounded like a small beast abandoned in a forgotten corner of the world. Her voice was light and hoarse as she said, "George, when you were 8 years old, you said you wanted to protect me. You were obviously still such a little child. How strange." But those words, I've never forgotten them. Willow gently brushed aside my bangs. I caught the scent of her perfume, mixed with a strong smell of alcohol. Her voice trembled. "When I was 16, our parents died. I inherited the family business and stood on my own. No one ever dared to say they would protect me. But today, for the sake of a woman, you actually told me to go die. Clearly, I am your only family, and you are my only family." I felt cold drops of liquid hit my face, then trail slowly downward. For a moment, it felt as if I were crying too. The drops kept falling, more and more, like a rainstorm. She choked back sobs and said, "Sister isn't a good role model. Sister didn't teach you well." "George, if there were no sister, what would you do? Would you be tricked by that bitch? Would you foolishly give everything for her? Would you choose to forgive her cheating? Would you take responsibility for a toxic woman's mess?" A light went off in my head. That actually gave me an idea. Tomorrow I'll fake a pregnancy test report, say that even though I never touched her, I'm about to become a father. That should really flesh out my simp persona. I was busy plotting. The next second, Willow shook me gently. Not knowing what she was about to do, I quickly pretended to be half asleep and called out, "Sis." Seeing that I'd woken up, Willow acted as if she hadn't cried at all. She put on a cold face, snorted softly, and said, "So you still remember I'm your sister? How strange. I thought I was your sworn enemy." The next second, she clapped her hands and called someone in. Only then did I realize, a professional team of beautiful psychologists was already standing by, fully prepared. Well then, looks like this psychological evaluation is unavoidable. Chapter 8. The next day, my sister seemed to be in much better shape. She was fully focused on reading How to Stop Adolescents from Falling into Puppy Love, and didn't even answer Makoto's phone calls. But what I didn't expect was, Makoto showed up at our door. Chapter 9. He came for money. Earlier, he wanted to start a company and get into import-export. My sister had given him $60 million. He rented a luxury office building in the city center, and hired a whole group of employees who bowed to him every day, calling him boss. The $60 million was spent in no time. But the business never took off. Now he'd come to ask my sister for a second round of investment. Makoto stepped inside. He swept his gaze around the first-floor living room, looking like a male lion patrolling his territory. Then he sat down on the sofa, adjusted his glasses, and sized me up as he asked, "Where's your sister? Why isn't she down yet?" He had a dignified appearance, sharp brows, bright eyes, just sitting there. He looked extraordinary. Even so, I had no desire to talk to him. I pretended not to hear him and kept my head down, playing on my phone. A servant answered in my place. "Miss Lou is reading parenting books in the study on the 4th floor. She'll be down in a while." Suddenly, my phone was snatched out of my hand. I looked up at Makoto, raised an eyebrow, and said in a low voice, "Give it back." He didn't. Instead, he stuffed the phone into his pocket, lowered his head to look at me, and said, "George, I heard your sister's planning to send you to study in the U.S. Take my advice, don't go abroad. Study domestically. Tuition in the States isn't a joke. Later, tell your sister you're not capable enough and don't want to go. Got it?" The way he spoke was like a father lecturing his son. I snatched my phone back in one swift motion and smiled casually. "What does that have to do with you? Are you worried my sister's spending too much money? Then don't come asking her for investment. Stop pretending to be some big shot." He suddenly flew into a rage. He grabbed my collar, his fist almost smashing into my face. I hadn't seen it coming at all and was badly startled. Then he pointed at me and snapped, "I let a lot slide before because you were young. You little bastard. You really have no conscience. Do you even see how your sister treats you? She's a woman, raising an orphan like you from childhood all the way to now. You don't see her hardship. You don't see her grievances. All you ever do is open your mouth to take and leech off her. No gratitude toward your elders at all. Willow has no obligation to raise you. No obligation to spend this much money on you. Understand? You really plan to cling to your sister for your entire life? A grown man being supported by a woman, aren't you ashamed? Useless piece of trash. So many, no obligations. I was honestly impressed. Makoto really missed his calling by not becoming a lawyer. At this moment, he stood there high and mighty, eyes blazing as he glared at me, as if I were some unforgivable villain. And he were the archangel of judgment passing sentence. In that instant, it all clicked. No wonder they said I, the vicious, evil villain, would end up tormenting the male lead. So that's how it worked. Every time I spent my sister's money, he felt tortured. Suddenly, I spotted my sister on the spiral staircase, walking toward us. An evil idea popped into my head. I immediately smiled at him. You're right, I really am useless. At my age, I should have gone out to work and earned my own money a long time ago. The fury on Makoto's face froze. He seemed unable to believe what he'd just heard. A flicker of surprise and joy rose in his eyes. Really? He asked. I smiled openly, my voice clear and ringing through the hall. Of course, big bro. You're absolutely right. What kind of man lets a woman support him? I've done some serious self-reflection and made up my mind. I'm going out to work, earn money, and support my goddess Sophia. I'll buy her a car, buy her a house, and save up $388,000 as bride price. In the next second, Willow's voice exploded through the hall. Don't you dare. She rushed over and grabbed my arm tightly. I widened my eyes, looking utterly confused. Sis, why are you getting mad now? Makoto's right. At my age, it's exactly the time to make money and save up for a wife. So I've decided. Tomorrow I'm heading to a construction site to haul bricks. I opened my phone and showed her the books in my shopping cart. Bravely being the backup option, the true mark of responsibility. The simp self-cultivation. Simp hard enough and you'll have everything. Life on the construction site from zero. From construction site to elite family. My struggle. That girl who smokes, drinks, gets tattoos, and goes clubbing is actually purer than anyone else. One absolutely unhinged book title after another, all laid bare before Willow's eyes. I chuckled and said cheerfully, Sis, don't worry about me. Look, this is the reading list Makoto just recommended to me. Pretty useful, right? I leaned closer and lowered my voice. Sis, Makoto said it himself, men earn money so women can spend it. The more capable and wealthy a man is, the more he wants women to be materialistic. Being materialistic was never a derogatory term, and Sophia was never some bad girl either. If I don't spend money on her, what would a girl like her want from me? Willow's pupils shrank sharply. At that moment, the system came back online. I heard it screaming inside Willow's head. Damn it, who the hell let our George read books like this? And who is that Sophia? Toxic woman. Toxic woman, you're under arrest. Willow, is this how you raise a kid? Damn it, I'm replacing this male lead Makoto. Makoto, you're under arrest too. How dare you recommend this kind of book to our George? These trash books are under arrest as well. The system went on a rampage, arresting everything in sight, but Willow ignored it. She simply pulled me toward her and stared at Makoto in disbelief. Her brows were full of indignation as she demanded, What exactly did you say to my brother? Makoto looked utterly shocked. He stammered, No, damn it, no, I didn't say anything. He's lying. I never recommended any reading list to him. If you don't believe me, you can check the security footage. He likes that Sophia himself. He wants to be a simp on his own. And now he's dumping the blame on me. Willow frowned. Her tone was unwavering. There was even a trace of pride in it. She snorted coldly and said, Check the cameras? There's no need. Our George would never lie. Makoto put his hands on my sister's shoulders. He looked straight into her eyes, speaking urgently. Willow, I just told him he should know gratitude, that he should cherish your money and your sacrifices. The next second, unexpectedly, Willow shook him off. Her voice was furious and baffled as she said, How do you know he isn't grateful? And what right do you have to accuse him of being ungrateful? Is what you call gratitude making him drop out of school and go haul bricks to earn money? Let alone the fact that my family is wealthy, even if the Liu family went bankrupt tomorrow. As the eldest sister, like a mother, I would rather wait tables at a restaurant or beg on the streets than let him drop out of school to work before he's even an adult. And even less would I ever let him become a beast of burden out there just to support some other woman. As she spoke, Willow grew even angrier. How could you make him have thoughts like this at a time like this? He's only 16. If he really moved out, I would. She pressed her lips together and stopped herself in the end, turning her face away. A few loose strands of hair fell by her temples, casting shadows over her lashes. In the end, She still couldn't bring herself to outright condemn the male lead. Makoto read the room, as if grabbing onto a sliver of hope. He immediately began to argue his case. Willow, listen to me. I know your brother wouldn't lie. Since that's the case, why don't we check the surveillance footage, see exactly what I said, and then you can judge me accordingly. Just watch the footage first. After that, no matter how much you hate me, I'll accept it. He stood up and said, Butler, please show Willow the security footage. Chapter 10. Butler Alex stepped forward, wearing a flawless professional smile. My temples throbbed violently. I was done for. I had gone way too far. Once Willow finished watching this surveillance footage, I would truly become the vicious male supporting role who framed the male lead. The next second, Butler Alex positioned himself in front of Makoto Ito and said, Mr. Ito, if we play the surveillance footage here, our young master George would have to hear once again what you just said. I do not wish to make the young master listen to that kind of remark a second time. It would not be beneficial to his healthy development. Alex continued politely. However, I clearly remember what you said just now. Mr. Ito, you suggested that, in order to save the Liu family some money, George's tuition should be cut. That makes me feel deeply ashamed. I watched Master George grow up. If the Liu family were ever truly reduced to such a state, I would rather donate my personal retirement savings than allow the young master to lack tuition funds. Willow's expression instantly cooled. She raised her eyes and looked straight at Makoto, as if seeing this person clearly for the first time. Pressing her lips together, she said, You even want to control my brother's tuition? Makoto's lips twitched. Clenching his teeth, he said, Willow, that's not what I meant. I was just worried that if he goes to the United States, he'll splurge, spend recklessly. Alex maintained his perfect smile. He presented several receipts on a tray, bowed, and said, At a gathering hosted by the master's family, it is not really our place as servants to speak. I am getting old and talk too much, something I truly should not have done. Now then, perhaps I should first process the reimbursement for the receipts Mr. Ito submitted. Mr. Ito, let me confirm with you, this time, you spent $78,000 on a dinner with partners, $120,000 on a watch, and $158,000 on high-end bespoke suits. As before, these are to be charged to the company account, correct? Makoto completely panicked. Gritting his teeth, he snapped, How do you do your job? Take these away immediately. There's no need to confirm with me. I'll deal with you, Alex. Willow spoke up. Her eyes were rimmed with red. Shaking her head, she said, Don't reimburse him. What is he? Anyway, on what grounds does the company reimburse him? Butler Alex bowed. Yes, young lady. Makoto stared blankly at Willow as the color drained from his face inch by inch. A single tear slid from the corner of Willow's eye. Still, she turned and left. Her voice choked as she said, See him out. From now on, whenever Makoto comes looking for me, I won't see him. Yes, young lady. I heard the system notification. Female lead's affection toward the male lead has decreased by 30. Current affection level, 70%. Chapter 11. In the days that followed, Makoto never came again. But my sister was also distracted and absent-minded, often staring off into space. The bullet comments buzzed with discussion. So pitiful. The second female lead loving the male lead is fate. Unless her affection drops to zero, without the male lead she'll be listless day after day. Some bullet comments asked, Where did the male lead go? I let out a cold laugh and answered the bullet comments in my head. Where did he go? Probably got treated like dog shit and eaten by a dog. The bullet comments kept scrolling. One comment said, The later plot changed too. The male lead Makoto proposed to the innocent, delicate female lead. The female lead married the male lead. But she was a materialistic, pure flower who dreamed of marrying into wealth. She constantly complained about his incompetence, and eventually gave up entirely, cheating on him so many times it practically had levels, all while emotionally manipulating him. In the end, the male lead couldn't bear the humiliation and committed suicide. Only then did the female lead feel pain and regret. Another comment added, The second female lead Willow also deeply regretted it. The last time she saw the male lead, they were arguing. She blamed herself terribly and spent her days drowning in tears. More bullet comments followed. Both the female lead and the second female lead will live their whole lives in remorse. Especially the second female lead, the crybaby rich young lady. I love her so much. Classic chasing the husband after losing him scenes. I love watching this. I abruptly sat up. I didn't care about the female lead. But why should my sister have to live a lifetime of regret? At that moment, my emotions were extremely complicated. How should I put it? Toward Makoto, I despised him and looked down on him. I wanted him to roll as far away as possible. Even if he ended up destitute, it would have nothing to do with me. But if that simp really died like this, my sister would regret it for the rest of her life. I stood up and quickly scanned the bullet comments. Found it. Makoto and the female lead's wedding was tomorrow. Right now, Makoto was drinking himself senseless at a bar. I grabbed a jacket and slipped it on, climbed over the wall, and snuck out of the garden. The night wind blew against my head, icy cold, so I casually bought a hat, but only under the streetlight did I realize it was green. Author's note: wearing a green hat symbolizes being cheated on. On the way, I recalled how the story of the Ito family had long circulated within high society. Makoto Ito was the real heir, but he had been switched at birth. He grew up in the countryside until the age of 11 before being brought back to the wealthy family. Yet he was inferior to his older brother in every way and suffered endless humiliation within the elite circle. Because of that, he was always trying to outdo his brother. When his brother started a business, he followed suit. When the family refused to give him money, he came to my sister instead. When his brother got married, the wedding was grand and spectacular, attended by celebrities from every circle. He, too, wanted to give the female lead a lavish wedding, to show off and steal the spotlight. But the family disliked him and refused to help him arrange anything. So once again, he turned to my sister. Unfortunately for him, after their last argument, my sister had already said she would not see him again, so he got nothing. To him, it seemed he would never measure up to his brother, never defeat him. What he found most unbearable was that the Ito family had already decided his brother would inherit the family business, and so he was heartbroken and miserable, drinking himself numb in a bar. Although Makoto was indeed pitiful, I had no obligation to feel sorry for him. I felt much more sorry for my sister. Chapter 12. Makoto had drunk far too much and was already completely wasted. When I arrived, he lifted his eyelids to glance at me, then turned his face away and sneered. "What are you doing here? Don't expect me to apologize to you." I sat down in front of him, leaning forward. I tapped the table and said, "Hey, don't get married tomorrow." Makoto let out a scornful laugh. "You little brat, are you telling me what to do now? What, do you think I can't give her happiness? Don't look down on me. What I hate most is people like you who grew up in wealthy families. What do you know? As long as I work hard, plus just a tiny bit of luck, one day I'll stand at the same height as you. One day, I'll rely on my own hands to give her a good life." Yes, Maria demands a lot. Yes, she's materialistic. But Maria and I both grew up in rural slums. We're the same kind of people. She understands me. I narrowed my eyes and said, "Why do you hate people who grew up in wealthy families so much?" Makoto laughed coldly. He stood up and looked down at me from above as he said, "You've never experienced it. How could you possibly understand? When I was first brought back to the wealthy family, I didn't know that some sports cars have doors that open upward. The first time I got in one, I thought the car was broken. I casually asked about it, and everyone there laughed so hard they couldn't even stand up straight." He gritted his teeth and glared at me as he continued. "Things like that happened to me every single day after I was brought back. Every day, I was embarrassing myself, humiliating myself. Someone like you, born with a silver spoon in your mouth, will never understand this in your entire life." I frowned. Damn it, why was he the one looking down on me? That felt extremely unpleasant. I wanted to look down on him too. Impatiently, I stood up, pressed down on his shoulder, and forced him to sit back on the sofa. Looking down at him from above, I said, "First, I was not born with a silver spoon. I was born in the slums. Second, you really are an idiot." I sneered. In wealthy circles, people who know sports car doors open upward are everywhere, but people who can tell rice from barnyard grass are extremely rare. They lack knowledge about farming, yet you never mock them. So why is it that when you lack knowledge about sports cars, they get to mock you? This is their little superiority game. Idiot, don't play their game. Compared to reasoning with someone and trying to change their worldview, I cared more about how to efficiently make him do what I wanted him to do. So for now, I had no interest in judging his behavior. What mattered most to me was this: stop fucking asking my sister for money. He cared about saving face and flashy appearances, constantly competing with his brother, but the one getting hurt was my sister's wallet. Right now, my sister refused to see Makoto and wouldn't give him any money. But who knew, maybe one day in the future she'd have another lovesick relapse. When that happened, if Makoto came asking for money again, she might actually give it to him. The best solution was to make him stop competing with his brother altogether. I was calculating silently in my head. After quite a while, I finally noticed Makoto's expression. He was staring at me, completely stunned, frozen in place. I felt a bit smug. Well, not bad. Right, this speech of mine, did it stir up some spontaneous proletarian pride in you? The very next second, he suddenly burst into loud, wailing sobs. Snot and tears streamed down his face. He wiped them messily while tugging at the corner of my clothes, crying out, do you know how I feel? I feel like my brother's life is this lush, green, straight road to success, but my life is just this gray, muddy little path. When I was a kid, there was even this one time. Damn it, I was getting a little impatient. Listening to someone unload their childhood trauma was seriously too much to handle. I wasn't a saint to begin with, especially not toward him. I interrupted him with 0 startup frames. Life is like a mountain, learn to embrace all rivers. Life is like a road, don't give a damn at all. He stared at me in shock. Whoa, how are you so good at rhyming? Obviously, this line is even recorded in the rap world. Author's note, a quote from a rapper after being cheated on. I paused, then continued. When I was a kid, I learned oil painting. My teacher taught me a technique. He looked up at me with a face full of admiration, waiting eagerly for what came next. You fucking. I had never learned oil painting at all. Since childhood. All the classes Willow signed me up for were finance, international politics, economics, family business management, commercial logic, negotiation, and public speaking. With both hands in my pockets, I forced myself to keep lying and said, my oil painting teacher told me that if a painting feels too light, too shallow, you should add a bit of gray. That gives the picture more weight, more depth, more sophistication. Even after a long time, it won't go out of style. Green is too light, there's no core to it. I don't like it. Makoto's pupils shrank abruptly. He froze in place, gripping my clothes even tighter. At that thought, I tossed the green hat I'd casually bought on the way over to him. Before he could open his mouth, I quickly delivered my closing line. Take a look, does this color look good? I'm leaving now. In short, you are not getting married tomorrow. Otherwise, I guarantee you'll die horribly. If you don't believe me, then you will definitely regret it. I stared straight into his eyes, making sure this lunatic heard every word clearly. Then, I turned around and walked away immediately. Cool and decisive. Chapter 13. When I got home. Sure enough, my sister grabbed my ear and started interrogating me. You little brat. Think your wings have hardened now? Huh? Did you go looking for that cheating woman again? Once I find out who she is and where she lives, I'll slap her 18 times. It's so late and you're not studying, running around everywhere instead. Do you even know that for a student, studying comes first? I was absolutely certain she was all sharp tongue and soft heart, so I answered without thinking. Studying comes first, but, sister, I think love comes first. Willow was so angry she raised her hand, then lowered it again. In the end, she still couldn't bring herself to slap me. She called over 2 beautiful assistants and told them to follow me starting today. She said it was necessary to cleanse me of my flirtatious tendencies. I sighed and looked at her profile as she arranged the assistants. Ever since she stopped seeing Makoto, this was the only time she showed even a bit of vitality. The rest of the time, she was completely absent-minded. Chapter 14. I walked into the foyer, took off my jacket, and a servant immediately accepted it with both hands. I stretched lazily. Tonight. First I played the role of an oil painting curator. Then I moonlighted as a part-time simp, delivering some absolutely unhinged, jaw-dropping first-rate nonsense. I fooled this one, then that one. After fooling yours, I moved on to fooling yours. Sigh. George, what kind of life are you even trying to scam your way into? Chapter 15. Early the next morning, a piece of news exploded like thunder and spread through the elite circles. The Ito family's real heir, Makoto Ito, had run away from his wedding. And he even announced that he had found his true love. I was speechless. His true love should have been my sister. Forget it. Forget it. There'd be time to deal with this lunatic later. At least he didn't marry Maria, which meant he wouldn't die. And my sister wouldn't spend her whole life drowning in regret. I lounged lazily against the sofa. A servant handed me a package. I opened it and found a sheet of paper. A pregnancy test report. What the hell was this? I had indeed once thought about forging a pregnancy test report to flesh out my simp persona, but I kept forgetting and never bought one. So why had this been mailed to me? The next second, I saw the note attached to it. In Makoto's neat, meticulous handwriting, it read, "To my bro George. I've decided to start an agricultural products business on my own. I've cut ties with my family, and I've called off the wedding as well. The only fly in the ointment is that Maria is pregnant, but as the saying goes, a loss may turn out to be a blessing. This child is destined to be connected to you. When the baby is born, I'll bring him over to you. By then, you'll become a dad without even trying. The things you said to me last night were like a hand reaching out from the unseen, gently touching my scars. Those words meant a great deal to me. So do you. I've been thinking, within these man-eating elite circles, perhaps people of the same origins as us are truly the same kind of people. Respectfully, Makoto." I was completely dumbfounded. So this pregnancy test report wasn't something I had someone fake. It was actually Maria's. Wait, can words really be arranged like this? Why is it that I recognize every single word? Yet once they're put together, I can't understand a damn thing. The bullet comments also exploded. Scrolling wildly, "The celebratory drinks are ready for you." Another comment said, "Wait, is this right? How did the male lead end up falling for George? I get it now. Last night, didn't George give the male lead a green hat? The hat is the trigger for the male lead simp attribute. Yeah, and George even told the male lead he was also from the slums. Oh, then it's not strange. This male lead's fetish is slum origins and hats. Another comment followed. What kind of decent male lead has a fetish like this? Are you serious? The next bullet comment replied, enough already. This development is completely unhinged. It's like my dad saying he'll show me beautiful women, only to find out it's clickbait thumbnails. Whatever, scroll what you get. If you really savor it, it's kind of sweet. I was speechless. Someone commented, honestly, the male lead turning gay is understandable. After those words he heard yesterday, I'd fall in love too. George really lives up to all those negotiation and public speaking classes he's had since childhood, but he's still a minor. What a sin. It's fine. This lunatic keeps spiraling. With a brain like that, everything he does will lose money. The more he does, the more he loses. In a few days, he'll probably lose even his underwear. This development is absolutely god-tier insane. I can't stop laughing just thinking about it. Chapter 16. I was still frozen in place, feeling nauseous, when the very next second, the thing in my hand was snatched away by my sister. She stared at the note. Her expression slowly turned to shock, then to fury. The next second, she tore the note to shreds. In an instant, I heard the system announcement. The female lead's affection toward the male lead has decreased by 70. Current affection level, 0. I looked up at Willow in disbelief. She was grinding her teeth. Oh, really? Back then I only said trashy women, gold diggers, and materialistic women were unacceptable. I forgot to mention men. Men are even worse. She completely lost it and shouted, I was so busy guarding against gold diggers that I forgot to guard against you. Damn it, Makoto. Butler, blacklist all his license plates. Keep an eye on him. Don't let him anywhere near our George. The system was screaming as well. Isn't Makoto just another form of gold digger? A brand new gold digger has appeared. Willow, block him properly. He still wants George to take over the mess. Is he insane? You scheming male lead, don't even think about turning our George gay. I stood there in a daze, still replaying what had just happened. So this was it. This was the real jaw-dropping premiere. This was the true tournament-level simp. No, wait, a green hat brain. Chapter 17. After that day, my sister's affection for Makoto dropped straight to 0. She was no longer absent-minded. She finally became normal again. As for Makoto, he actually founded Wang Agricultural Products Company. At present, the company was very small and hadn't lost much money yet, but that company name alone was more than enough to thoroughly piss off my sister and the system. When they heard the company name, even Butler Alex snapped a chopstick in half. Time flowed by like water. 2 more years passed just like that. And I turned 18. Chapter 18. During the spring festival when I was 18, I still spent it together with my sister. At this moment, my sister was personally cooking the New Year's Eve dinner. Alex and the nanny were helping as well. I lay on the bed in my room. From outside the room came the pre-show commercials of the Spring Festival Gala. Inside the room, on the table lay admission letters from top American universities. Beside them was a plate of fresh fruit my sister had personally cut for me. In the distance, fireworks burst into the sky. Whoosh whoosh, without end. I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling window, and saw the moon. The moon was very bright, the same one Willow had pointed out to me when I was little. Outside the door, my sister's voice carried a smile as she called out to ask me, the beef ribs are almost ready. Our George, do you want them fried or grilled? I got up, pushed open the door, and walked toward the kitchen. I knew that behind us, the moon would keep rising higher and higher, and all those past bitter moments had already been gently, softly dried away.